Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be doing a basic oil change on a Bentley. Oh yes. So many people will be put off by doing an oil change on one of these cars, but when it comes down to it guys, this is just another engine and it's really quite simple. So let's get into it. So guys, the first thing we're going to want to do is take your key, place it in the ignition barrel, start the engine, and we're going to do this and leave the car running for about 10-15 minutes. We just want to get the engine oil nice and warm so that it's nice and thin, so that when we come to take the oil out, we get all of the oil out. Once we've done that, we're going to be putting it into jack mode. We can go ahead and show you how to do that now. So if we look down here on this panel, you've got this button here and this button here. We press both of those together, and if we look at the dashboard, if I zoom in on that, you'll see we've got a new icon there at the bottom. Looks like a car, and it's got an up arrow and a down arrow. That's put the car into jack mode, so we're now safe to jack the car up. So not a good idea to tilt the car while it's still running, because the oil is going to drip to the back. So we'll leave it running for a few minutes, I'd say 10-15 minutes, then we'll come back. Having got the engine oil nice and warm so it's nice and thin, the next thing we're going to do is reach down here and pull that lever. That's going to lift the hood. And some of you guys may not know how to actually raise the hood on a Bentley, so let's go ahead and show you that. The first thing we're going to want to do is place a hand under here, lift, and we see the B here is just raised. A bit awkward to do with one hand, but now we lift that B, as you can see, and we raise the hood, or as we like to say in England, the bonnet. And as you'll see inside here, we haven't got a lot of room to do much, but we need to identify where the dipstick is. That's for the engine oil, and that's this thing here, and this is where we're going to be topping the oil up later. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to be taking the jack. We're going to identify a safe place under the car to jack the car. We're going to use the block of wood here. We're going to use this here at the back of the back wheel. What that's going to do is going to stop the car from potentially rolling backwards if for any reason there's an issue with the transmission lock in the car. Of course, the car will be left in park during the whole process, and the handbrake is on, so it shouldn't go anywhere. It's still bolt and braces. Make sure you've chopped the wheels. Okay, let's get this thing up in the air. So as you can see on the Bentley, you've got a conveniently placed jacking point here, and that allows you then to go and put the axle stand under the lower arm here. I like to just lower the jack down slightly so it's resting on the axle stand. That's going to give us access to all of the various bolts underneath here to remove this under tray panel here, which we need to remove so we can gain access to where the oil filter itself is, and also the drain plug. So let's go ahead and undo some of those bolts. I'm going to start by undoing these self-tapping 7mm bolts, which are all the way across the front valance area. They've been put in place of what should be here, which are clips on this car. So I'm just going to work my way around the car, undoing all of these clips, and then this under tray panel will just drop out of the way, so we've got good access underneath the car. Having removed all of the various bolts on this car, we had some T30s here, and these 7mm. There's also a couple of zip ties holding the back on. I should now be able to remove back to the car. So we return back to the car, and this panel should come out. So let's see if I can do this one-handed. Okay, so as I'm pulling that, I can see that this lower panel is actually held also here, which is the inner wheel arch. Now coming around here, looks like I'm also going to have to disconnect it from this wheel arch when there's a T30 I think under here. I'm pointing there, which I need to remove. So what I'm going to have to do is get underneath there with my socket, get those undone, and see where we go. Okay, so I've undone those bolts. There's actually two on each inner fender at the bottom, and they're actually T25s they are. So you've got T30s in the middle down there, and over here you've got two T25s. So it's already drooping down. Let's see if we can get it down now. There you go, guys. How easy that just came away. Okay, so with that out of the way, we can start looking up here. We can see the oil filter sat here. It's a cartridge type, so we're going to need to undo this to remove the cartridge, and the oil drain is over there. So that's where we'll be draining the oil from. So I'll go ahead and remove this plastic trim and we'll get draining the oil. All right, so what I've got set up here is I've got an external battery here, and that's because the battery on the Bentleys is in the boot or trunk. And what that's going to, on boot if we're in the UK, that's going to power this little pump here. And I'm going to pull some of the oil, not all of it, but some of it out of the dipstick here. And that's going to pull and pump straight down into here. So let's go ahead, turn that on and get draining some of the oil. You see the oil coming up the pipe there? I'm going to feed that down until we get down to where the sump is in the car and start pumping the oil through. And there we go, we heard the change in the noise, and you can see the oil now coming all the way down. And that's going to pump some of the 12.5 litres of oil from the sump into that vessel. Don't know about you guys, but this is really making me want to go to the toilet. Let's give that filter a clean. So I finally managed to get all of the 12.5 litres of oil out of this monstrosity of an engine. It really is unbelievable. This must have taken 20 minutes of that pump working as hard as it could to get all of that oil out. Now I have replaced the dipstick. I do not want any contaminants getting down in there, damaging this engine. Could you imagine if something got in there, ruined this engine? I don't even want to think about it. So, next thing, let's get underneath, let's get the oil filter off, let's drain the rest of the oil from the sump, and then let's get this thing back on the ground. Okay, I've got a 34mm socket here on a ratchet to undo the oil filter. I've got a vessel to catch the oil and the filter as it falls. It shouldn't be too hard. Let's give it a pull. There we go. Starting to turn. We should see a little few drips maybe coming out the base of that oil filter as it turns. Well, no oil coming out at the moment. That's a good thing. Certainly not going to knock that. Now I've removed the socket. I should be able to do this by hand, and I can. So let's get that filter off. Let's unwind this by hand. Here we go, a few drips. Draining most of the oil before we do this means that we shouldn't get too much of a spillage through here. Let's unwind that all the way out. It seems to be getting trapped on something at the back. Not sure what that is. See if we can get it out anyway and released. What are we stuck on? That Jubilee clip there, right in my way. So I'm just going to get a screwdriver and loosen that, and then we'll get back to removing this oil filter. Meanwhile, we'll let that just drip until it's drained. With the filter removed, we can have a look in there and just make sure that all looks clean and as it should be. There's no obvious signs of metal bits or anything flying around in there that shouldn't be there. The filter itself I've just tipped upside down and drained into the vessel. Get the rest of that out. What we're going to do now is take the filter back to the top of the car. We're going to pull this filter out. We're going to remove the white seal, this one here, using a pick, and we're going to replace that with the new seal that comes in the filter kit. And this cartridge seal, well, that's going to go straight to the bin. So this car was supposed to have had an oil change by the garage when it was bought less than 2,000 miles ago. Now, if I can zoom in, you might be able to see the state of this filter. it is disgusting. Now, it may have had a change. Tell me what you think. Put your answers in the comments, but for me, this car, it may have had the oil change, but it's not had a filter for quite a while. So let's go ahead, let's get this filter out. Placing the two filters side by side, just to make sure they are the same height, same width, same everything. Tip it upside down, you can see they're identical. I've removed the white seal from here. For anyone that's interested, this particular oil filter being used is a Blueprint, as you can see there, and it's the ADV 182126, and that is a direct replacement for the VW Audi Group for the W12 6-litre engine. You can go to Bentley and pay stupid money for them. I think this cost me about 15 quid. So, new filter, check in there, everything looks good. I'll slide the new filter back on, give that a nice firm push. We heard that click into position and seated. Next thing to do is to replace the seal. A bit awkward to do with the one hand, bear with me. So there's a new seal. Now, there's already plenty of oil around here, so shouldn't have too much of a problem to reseat the seal. But we will re-oil this seal as well when it goes back on the car, and I'll explain why as we're doing that. Okay. So, just going to peel this seal down to there. I do need two hands for that, so join me again shortly. Okay, so we've gone and replaced the oil filter itself. We've gone and replaced the seal, put that in the groove at the bottom. I've already pre-lubed now the seal itself, so we can go back to the car and we can refit this in position. Okay, so when you reintroduce the oil filter housing here back to the engine itself, it's going to go up at a bit of an angle. We want to push it in as square as we can to get the threads nice and lined up. Then we can hand tighten this as tight as you can. Make sure you do lubricate that seal. Lubricating the actual O-ring seal allows you to twist and turn it and tighten it up without actually pinching the seal and preventing any leaks further on. Then just use your ratchet and your 32mm socket. Sorry, I said 32, it's actually 36. And just give that a little nip. Once that's nipped up, you can be sure, hang it back on there again. Yep, that's nice and tight. You can be sure that you're not going to get any leaks from your oil filter. So, next job, over to the other side of the engine to release the final dregs of oil from the sump itself. Now then, you've got two bolts which look very similar here. You've got this one, which is an oil line, and you've got this one, which is actually the sump plug. It's a 19mm. Now, it might be quite tight, so one spanner on its own might not be enough leverage for you to undo it, so you can always use a separate spanner. You see how that's interlocked on there, and just give that a good twist down, and that's just broken it. So now we can move that, and that's nice and loose. So I'm now gonna bring my vessel over to catch any oil that drips out of there. Just bring this across, position that nicely so it's there to catch any oil. I'll get that undone, catch any oil that comes out of there, and off we go again. So with the bolt removed from there, the sump bolt, you can see the last dregs of oil just draining out. Now I like to do it this way by sucking it out the top and then doing the filter, then doing this, and it stops a massive gush of oil coming out from underneath and potentially going all over your driveway. Of course, if you're in a garage on a ramp and you've got a big catch tube for this, or a funnel should I say, there's really no issue, but on your driveway this seems to work really well. Okay, we'll leave that to drain so it's fully drained. We'll get that sump plug put back in there, we'll torque it back up again, and then we really are ready to start thinking about the reassembly process. So that's taken just a couple of minutes and we're down to just a couple of drips. I could leave that to carry on dripping and it would get a little bit more out, but considering this is 12.5 litres of oil we're changing, I don't think the few drips are going to make a huge difference. So at this point I'm going to reintroduce the sump plug, bear with me. Tighten that all the way by hand as much as possible. With that done, I can get the 19mm spanner, move the vessel out of the way. I can give this a nip up. Now, that's plenty. Oh, I'm just going to catch this little bit of oil that's dripping out the vessel at the bottom here, so it can go on the drive. That for me is plenty tight enough, just nipping it up with a spanner. You can go and get the torque settings and torque it up if you so wish, but for me, I think that's fine. Okay, so it's now time to start thinking about putting the oil back in the car. This car does specify Mobil 1 0W40 engine oil. You can get alternatives other than Mobil 1, but we're going to stick with the recommended manufacturer's oil. We're going to start by putting the two 5 litres in, which will give us 10 litres. Then we'll just check the dipstick and see where we sit. So back over at the car, we've got our funnel with a filter. We've got the oil, which we need to use 2 hands normally to pull it up. We'll just pull that up, undo this. Our beautiful Mobil 1 oil is waiting to be poured back into this engine. I've just got to remove this little plastic tab here. Let's go ahead and pour some of this oil in. I like to use the filter on the funnel. Shouldn't be any impurities whatsoever coming out of the actual new oil itself, because it was a sealed vessel. But of course, there's always the potential for something flying in the air to land inside here as we're pouring the oil in, so the filter will just catch that if that were to happen. So I'll carry on doing this. We'll get the two 5 litres in, and then I'll resume the video and we'll see where we're at with the dipstick. Alrighty then, so I've just finished putting the 10 litres of oil in, so I'm going to remove the dipstick. We're going to give that a bit of a clean. Make sure we've got any oil residue off there. Okay, so it's nice and clean, which it is. I'm going to place that back in the hole. I'm going to put the dipstick all the way down, and I'm going to pull it up, being careful not to tilt it, so I can see if we've got any oil showing at all. And we're just starting to touch the bottom of the dipstick at that, so I'm going to go ahead and place the dipstick back in, and I'm going to get another quart of oil, another litre of oil, and we're going to put that in there, and then we'll test it again. Now I've put 11.5 litres of oil back in the car, but of course we've not started the engine yet, so the oil filter needs to fill up. And if we look at the dipstick, it may be hard for you all to see on the video, but we are right at the very top of the maximum mark. So I'm not going to go ahead and put any more in at this stage. What we're going to do is replace the dipstick. I'm going to remove the funnel, place it to the rag so it doesn't leak oil all over our nice Bentley engine. I'm going to replace the filler top. Yes, I know the B's upside down, but we'll sort that in a few minutes. So what I'm actually going to do now is just nip underneath, have a quick look at the filter housing. Definitely nothing dripping there at the moment, and nothing dripping out of the sump plug at the moment. So we feel good to go back inside the car. I'm going to get the key, put the key in the ignition, press the brake pedal. I'm not going to rev the car, but I'm going to start it. I'm just going to let that idle for a few minutes, let the engine oil circulate. We've got no knocks, rattles or bangs. It's always a good sign. Underneath, no leaks. It's also a very good sign. And that should be plenty for that oil filter housing to have completely filled up now with oil. So what we're going to do is the engine just finishes its startup cycle. I do love the way the Bentley engine starts. We're going to go back inside. We're going to switch the engine off. What I'm going to do now is leave the car for about 15-20 minutes, let the engine oil level settle. I'm going to take the car down off the jack. I'm going to remove the axle stand so it's on flat level ground, and then we're going to check the oil level and get the oil level set correctly. Once that's done, I'm going to come over, jack the car up again and refit this under tray panel the same way, well, the reverse of what we did when we took it off. Interesting to note, there is actually a functional ram air dam here. Ram air is fed in through here, runs along here and out at the back end there, and that actually feeds cool air towards the back of the engine and all over around the gearbox area as well. So interesting that Bentley have chosen to do that. I've obviously felt that there's a need to. So please do make sure when you do these oil changes on these cars that you do refit these under trays. They're not there just for keeping the bottom of your engine pretty. Sometimes they are actually functional. All right guys, this is the moment of truth. We've got a dipstick which is totally dry, no oil at all. I have gone ahead and put 1 last litre of oil, so we've got now 12.5 litres of fresh oil back in. I really can't get this to focus on camera, but let's go put this back in here. Pull out the dipstick and see, can we get that to focus? We are bang on the top. I don't know if you can see that. We are bang on the top of the maximum level, which is absolutely perfect. So I think that goes to show that if I can do it, anyone can do it. If you've been lucky enough to own one of these Bentley W12 engines, whether it's in a Phaeton or in a Bentley, don't fear doing an oil change. It's really not that hard. It's the same as any other car. All that we've got to do now is go back into the car, turn the ignition on, press these 2 buttons again and hold them down, and that symbol should, for jack mode, disappear. And there we go, disappeared. Start the engine. No oil light. We've been underneath, we've got no leaks. That is a resounding success. If I can do it, you can do it. If you did like this video, please think about giving me a like, a thumbs up, subscribe. If you've got any comments on what I did, how I could have done it better, please let me know in the comments below. I'd be really interested to know. I'm not a mechanic, I'm just someone having a go. If I can do it, you can. And while I'm waiting for the oil to be pumped back out of the vessel, back into the container, so I can dispose of the oil responsibly, I'm going to sit here and enjoy a little bit of this. So until next time, take it easy, keep on having a go. That's what it's all about. If I can do it, so can you. Till next time.